Notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a moment, headliners on GB News, but first, the top stories this hour. The US and Ukrainian presidents have held a joint news conference from the White House in Washington this evening. President Joe Biden vowed to continue supporting Ukraine through its war with Russia, saying Americans stand proudly with the Ukrainian people and will do so for as long as it takes. It's been 300 days since Vladimir Putin launched his invasion into Ukraine, and Mr. Biden said the Ukrainian people had continued to show the world their unbreakable determination to fight for their freedom.
This year has brought so much needless suffering and loss to the Ukrainian people. But I want you to know, President Zelensky, I want you to know that all the people of Ukraine to know as well. The American people have been with you every step of the way, and we will stay with you. We will stay with you for as long as it takes. What you're doing, what you've achieved, it matters not just to Ukraine, but to the entire world.
Well, the US is the largest international donor of financial support to Ukraine. And early this week, they announced a further £1.5 billion in military aid. Volodymyr Zelensky said every dollar will strengthen not only Ukraine's security, but global security too. Well, in other news today, the government has accused the unions representing ambulance workers of making a conscious choice to harm patients by going on strike.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? When?
Well, the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, claims unions are refusing to work with the government at a national level on how paramedics will cover emergency calls during strike action. But Unison's General Secretary, Christina McInerney, says Mr Barclay's refusing to negotiate on pay.
I'm getting nothing from him or from this government. All they're saying to me is, we can't negotiate about pay. And where does that leave us? One of the reasons the ambulance service, the NHS, is in such a dire state is because they haven't invested in the workforce. So people leave. Those who are left are under increasing pressure. These people don't get meal breaks. They hardly get a day off. They work excessive overtime because it's the only way the service can run.
A final vote on controversial gender reforms in Scotland has been delayed until tomorrow. MSPs were supposed to vote this evening, but instead continued to debate aspects of the bill. The bill will remove the requirement for a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria in order to receive a gender recognition certificate. It would also shorten the time people must live in their acquired gender from 2 years to 3 months. Dozens gathered to protest outside the Scottish Parliament, raising concerns over its possible impact on women and girls. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB even, plus radio. You're watching GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen. Joining me tonight to surgically dissect Thursday's newspapers, we have Cressida Wetton, MD, and Nick Dixon, ADHD.
More OCD, but OK.
Let's go methodically slicing through the front pages. Thursday's Mail, driving home for Christmas. It's a petrol rip-off. It's their front page. Thursday's Telegraph, NHS, to be offered new pay deal to end strikes. The Guardian, NHS brace for surge in patients after strikes by ambulance. Thursday's Mirror, deadly silence. Thursday's Express says, fears sick are suffering at home as 999 calls plummet. And Thursday's Star, missing. If spotted, please let him know that now would really be a good time to pull his finger out and fix things. And those are your front pages. Try and make some sense of all that then. Kicking off and the in-depth look at the papers. Let's go to the Express, Cressida. What's on their front page?
OK, so on their front page, a hero's welcome and Patriot missiles for Zelensky. We're also looking at cost of asylum soars to £3.5 billion a year. I know we're going to talk about that later. The largest one here, fears sick are suffering at home as 999 calls plummet. So sick and injured people gave up calling 999 yesterday as the biggest ambulance strike in decades gripped the country. So emergency calls are plummeting. And also, hobbling lioness roars to victory. So they are looking at Beth Mead, who I'm obviously an expert on because I love football. Do you know Beth Mead?
Very well, yeah.
Do you?
Great person. No, don't watch it.
Well, she's won Sports Personality of the Year, Nick.
And it's absolutely deserved.
Well, I had a quick look at a video of her. She sounds like she's a lot of fun. Her mum tried to make her do ballet, but she used to play up and get kicked out, so...
Kind of the anti-Billy Elliot.
The anti... Yeah, that's exactly what she is, yeah. I always think Sports Personality of the Year sort of sounds like a bit of a contradiction to me, but I'm very ignorant.
How dare you? You're saying they don't have personalities?
Although I think it's true to say that their achievement tends to be sporting rather than personality. Like, the award always goes to someone who's good at sport. They don't go, I mean, absolutely lost every single match they played, but, you know, good lad.
Do you know what?
Exactly.
I think it's... the time you're wrong, Steve, is that they could have given it to Tyson Fury, who has the most exuberant personality in sports, but they robbed him of it because he said some, not very PC things a few years ago. So it's also quite political, this award, let's be honest, because Fury came back from being massively fatter than that person who couldn't get on the Qatar flight we're about to look at later. Yep. He came back from that to fighting Deontay Wilder, who was the most fearsome puncher in the world at the time, getting off the canvas like The Undertaker and getting a win that was given as a draw. They still didn't have him Sports Personality of the Year, so I just don't think... the whole thing's rigged to me. Sorry for that rant. I know it's got a lot of passion suddenly came out about sports personality.
That's fantastic.
But I'm not saying Beth Mead doesn't deserve it. She absolutely probably does.
She's very good at football.
But that's the thing. If you're really good at football, the thing you win is football, and it's job done. But
yes.
It's the same complaint that I'd had when actors get awards. Like, you've already got paid millions to be in the film. Why is there a secondary pat on the back? I'm just bitter. I mean, I'm bitter on many levels.
Well, if it's any consolation, Steve, no one watches the Oscars anymore unless someone actively physically assaults someone, and that's the only way they can actually get viewers now.
Any of that happen at BBC Sports Personality? Any punches? Because, you know, some of those people, I guess, are trained punchers.
She scored 6 goals and 5 assists. What is that? Is that a pass?
That's where you set up the goal, you pass it, and then someone else scores.
Right.
So, yeah, it's like a type of very good pass.
So only 5 assists in a year? That doesn't sound like a lot. How often is she playing football?
You can only do it when you're on the pitch, though. To be fair, it's, you know, credit where it's due. Let's move on then to the Telegraph, Nick. What's their front page looking like?
Oh, yeah, Telegraph have got NHS to be offered new pay deal to end strikes. And I've been trying to look into this, and it's this fast-track thing that Steve Barclay's talking about, but I'm not quite sure what's actually going to happen. So typically they have to wait until August to get their backdated rise, even though the recommendations are made by an independent body in April. But he's saying he's going to speed the process up. But I can't actually see in the information I've got exactly how it's going to be sped up and how much and in what way. But that could just be me. But obviously something needs to be done. And that other front page had the fears of the 999 calls are going to plummet and so on. They've actually said that the number of 999 calls fell significantly on Wednesday after ambulance chiefs urged people to ask themselves, am I going to die before picking up the phone? I mean, on an existential level, the answer's always yes. So you could make the call with that sort of loophole. But that's a heck of a thing to have to ask before you pick up the phone, isn't it?
It's implying that he thinks people call for fun at other times.
Some do prank, don't they? But many of them have real ailments, Steve.
But I think the thing is, if you're not going to die from something, could you make your own way into the hospital?
Yeah. Can you walk it? Yeah, how far? How bad is the stroke?
I think I read the other day that people aren't calling... They're calling 111 now, but they're giving up on the calls. It's something like half of the calls they don't actually get through, they just give up. Maybe that's...
It sounds like they may as well try 911 at this point. Just try everything. I'm not making light of this. You've sort of got to... Because it's a comedy show, but it is incredibly bleak, obviously, just so the viewer knows.
But then for a bit of balance, though, I suppose on a day when we're told, don't call 999, the headline is, people didn't call 999... But stop trying to... There's no angle that they wouldn't find appalling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not surprising the numbers were lower.
Yeah, that's a good point. They've also got Zelensky's US trip rewarded with more weapons. That's just what he wanted for Christmas, more weapons. So this is obviously Zelensky meeting Biden. And there's this... I don't know if it's actually happened yet or not. They're saying afterwards he was going to address Congress. And he's basically going to ask for... There's $45 billion of additional military support. And what I've been hearing on Twitter, I don't know if it's true, is that he's going to say, come on, guys, can you go a bit higher than that? And the thing is, Americans are getting a bit sick of it. I mean, by the way, Biden as well, he gave Biden a special medal and Biden said, God love you, which he also said to that trans TikTok star Dylan Mulvaney. So it's like kind of a standard. You think Zelensky would get a bit more than that, wouldn't you? But one thing I've noticed, not that I'm like anti-aid to Ukraine, Steve, but I've noticed some Americans on Twitter, who sort of political people, getting a bit sick of it, saying how much more of this Americans going to take and just giving them endless money. Although my friend went out there the other day, God knows why, for his holiday, just to check out the scene in Ukraine. And you know how some people were saying it wasn't real? It's definitely real, Steve. Or they've got incredible CGI. That's what I'm going to say. So, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I'm sure it's real, but I'm sure your friend has a terrible travel agent. Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure it's a cheap
He went
holiday.
to Afghanistan, then he went to Serbia. He's like, where's the most dangerous places I can go? So, yeah, a bit of a legend. But
I suppose that you might get more medical treatment there than you would over here today. So let's bear in mind, we've just read the headline on the Telegraph, NHS to be offered new pay deal to end strikes. Let's take a look at the Mirror and how they're covering the strikes precedent.
They're looking at this in an entirely different light. They won't talk pay to ambulance crews. They won't talk pay to hospital porters. They won't talk pay to nurses. They won't talk pay to anyone. Deadly silence.
Ah.
So that's a slightly different take, isn't it?
Those two newspapers need to go in a room and have a fight.
Yeah, they do. Rishi Sunak and Steve Barclay are prolonging NHS strikes by refusing to talk about pay, with struggling staff, unions warn.
I mean, Nick, do you not think that maybe if you talked, even if this talk was to say no, we're going to stay where we are on this, at least the talks might mean fewer strikes. Which, as someone who is more likely to break his leg than ever get paid more, I'd rather have this service.
Yeah, I mean, which side are you on, though, Steve? Because obviously the Mirror is taking the strike side. I mean, it's the left-wing paper. It's not particularly surprising, and obviously demonising Sunak and Barclay. And the Telegraph's seemed a bit more moderate. Are you on the which? Are you a full-on pro-striker person?
I mean, I'm the host, so I'm not allowed to have an opinion. But I'll tell you what I think. I think I've already just said it. I'd rather people actually take part in negotiations, because then we don't get the problem of a strike. I'd rather they spend all day talking about it every day.
We don't want the NHS being ghosted by the Prime Minister.
Do you know where my sympathy shifted? When Mick Lynch, I saw a clip, he said, he said, called GBNews right-wing bigots. And I just thought, that's no way to talk about Steve, do you know what I mean? And actually, on a serious note, that is very unfair, because we have so many people. We have people, production staff and so on, who are further left than Mick Lynch. So it's a very broad church we have here. So I thought it was really disappointing that Mick Lynch just labelled us all like that, and it put me right off his strikes.
I don't think he watched the entire series of Ministry of Defence back in the day. I think that's why he doesn't fully understand.
I'm starting to think he doesn't watch headliners, Steve.
It might be the case. So, Nick, let's take a look at what the Daily Star's got on their front page.
Well, they've gone, and it's a bit serious from the staff once, they've gone missing. And it says, if spotted, please let him know that now would be a really good time to pull his finger out and fix things. And they're talking, of course, about Rishi Sunak, and with this slightly odd photo here. So they've sort of semi-attempted proper news there. And they're very much taking the same view as the Mirror, that, where's Rishi gone? And to be honest, Rishi in general hasn't been particularly visible, has he? He's been more of a sort of managerial guy. We saw him pop up with Klaus Schwab with those weird Star Trek suits they were wearing. But we haven't really seen... I sort of feel like, like Boris was just there, very present every day, making some joke or gaffe. gaff. I don't believe, and Liz Truss was sort of big news every day for obvious reasons. Do you feel like Sunak's like sort of, he's not really there, is he? Do you feel like that?
No, it's almost like he's avoiding the media, certainly. Maybe he's working in the back room.
I think he's just...
I don't know.
Well, they all say he's working really hard, and that's kind of his thing, isn't it? I'm a hard-working, serious, but Rishi's so serious, he can't even talk to any of you, ever. He's working so hard.
But if he's working hard, why do we not have the problem solved? Why does the Daily Star get to do that front page?
It's behind-the-scenes work, Steve.
Yeah.
What do you think, Cresta?
I don't know. I think it sounds like he's biding his time and hoping that inflation's going to disappear.
Right.
At which point the nurses will say, oh, yeah, it's fine now. So...
Yeah, the long game, playing the fiscal long game.
Yeah. Well, at a time with all this serious news going around, let's take a look at The Sun with its cutting-edge journalism, Cressida.
Well, The Sun, yeah, it turns out the Daily Star are the heavy political paper out of the two of them. The Sun says, Jesus, Mary and Joseph and the wee donkey, line of duty is back. That's... Yeah, hip-hop drama, Line of Duty is returning to deliver... This is awfully blurry. To deliver the explosive climax denied fans in the last series.
Yeah, the blur is deliberate to put you off. This is The Sun, clearly terrified of doing any stories after the Clarkson thing. Yeah. They've been so attacked. They're like, guys, the TV show's back. Hey, your parents love it. It's back. Isn't TV good? That'll just be The Sun now for the next 3 months.
It's effective. I mean, this is a front page that wouldn't even be on TV Quick magazine. I'm sure they'd find something more exciting in the world of telly. Yeah. A telly show that's ended is coming back for another money wringing out of the system series.
You're right. This is a disappointing middle page. You're right. It's a disappointing little magazine that falls out in the middle that you don't read. It's disappointing even for that, isn't it, like you say?
Did you watch it? Are you going to watch it?
I didn't watch any of them, which is why I was not upset about finding out who the mole or the agent or the... We found out who someone was and people weren't happy about it.
It was mental. I didn't watch it either.
Well, I can't wait to not watch the next series as well. A quick break now, but join us in too for our obligatory Trump and Musk updates and why you might want to have a rethink if you're going to head over to Netflix.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Stephen Allen, and making it feel like it's the longest night of the year, Cressida Wetton and Nick Dixon. Thursday's Telegraph, Nick, and as if wearing kilts wasn't confusing enough, there's now an update about Scotland's gender recognition certificates.
Yeah, it's confusing and annoying. So SNP not ignoring women, you immediately think probably are. After voting down gender reform bill amendments, insists MSP. So Karen Adams says there's no evidence male sexual predators will self-declare as female in order to access women's spaces, presumably except for all the evidence that there totally is. But crazy claim. I mean, of course it's dangerous. But then again...
So we can get the ducks in a row. Never said that wrong as well. It's your surname, it's throwing me off.
Be careful.
Which also would have been fitting here. But
that
what
could have been ducking terrible. Well,
Karen White stuff.
There's been previous examples of. I was hoping Cressida would provide it, but there's been.
Yeah, Karen White, the now lady who was in a woman's prison and then attacked more women.
So do you think that speaks to this particular use of certificates, or would that be the argument be? Well, clearly it's already something that people can do anyway.
Well, I think Karen
easy
was already convicted, wasn't she? So.
Yeah, I think so. Do you know what I think? What I think Karen Adams is saying, that once they transition, they've always been a woman anyway. I think that's how she's getting out of it. Therefore, there's no evidence, because in her world, they've always been a woman inside. I think that's the loophole, personally, that she's using. But that's just my theory. And it says, but there's now where it gets complicated is there's these amendments that they propose. One of them, about making exceptions for sexual violence, and it's not quite clear. But these amendments have been rejected, or they're about to be rejected. But then the Times has an update saying where someone has said a gender recognition certificate is for trans people. It's not for sexually violent individuals who want to exploit any systems. Those people are by definition exploitative. It seems like a strange tautology to me. I mean, that's the whole reason we have the bill, is because of those people. He's sort of saying that seems like a question of definition.
Well, yeah, but I think the amendment. So he put forward the amendment saying that actually these certificates should only be for people who aren't exploitative. So if you are I think they call it high risk.
Yeah,
but if you exploit something, you're going against the whole system in the first. Carry on.
Well, and this idea of high risk. I mean, most of what we hear about sex offences, or we often hear that they're all very serious, aren't they? People often don't want to make a distinction between levels of sexual offence, and yet that's exactly what's happening here. So it's being suggested that high-risk sex offenders should be more closely monitored, have less access to these gender reform recognition certificates. What's it called?
Yeah, GRCs, gender recognition certificates.
But you'd think as soon as I'm surprised that people are proposing to divide people into more and less serious sexual offences.
Yes, nearly ended Ken Clark's career saying that on the news.
And what's really frustrating is it says the plan had been intended to prevent a scenario where women would have to refer to their attacker as she or her in a courtroom. I mean, imagine, that's disgusting. That makes me so angry. The idea of someone's raped you or whatever and you have to refer to them by their pronoun. I mean, I'd probably commit I'd probably kill someone and then I'd be in prison. That just makes me so mad. I'm not even a woman and I'm angry. Doesn't that make you so angry?
So compassionate, Nick.
Well, I get called a misogynist, but I actually care about this stuff.
Very much like the Hulk in that first Avengers film. We think your secret is that you're always angry. You've got that base level anger.
Well, that's true, but for once I'm applying it to something good.
The Daily Mail, Cressida, and how many people does it take to process an asylum claim, or rather, how long does it take them?
It takes far too long. Suella Braverman says that civil servants processing asylum claims at the rate of just one per week. Just one per week. She's criticised the Home Office staff for being too slow to process asylum claims today. The Home Secretary told peers that caseworkers handling asylum cases had to speed up to help reduce the 100,000 now strong backlog and reduce multi-million-pound hotel bill. And of course, this comes as the Prime Minister's last week pledged to clear that six-figure traffic jam by the end of next year. But
so if it's 100,000 at the rate of one a week, isn't that 20,000 years or something?
How many of them are there? I don't know.
I mean, you can clear the backlog, but it will take... The sun will still be around by then, but humans might not be. That's all we know.
Pretty much, yeah. So, of course, they're looking into alternatives. Holiday parks, former student halls, now cruise ships. I don't know. I assume they'll be docked and they won't have to watch the entertainment. I don't know.
We've all considered cruise ships when everything else fails.
Yeah. Not worth it. Nick, surely you were in favour of this. Surely everyone should be in favour of speeding up a process. Whether you like the process or not, making it slow makes it worse.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the situation changed. As Peter Hitchens put it, the border, the sea is now essentially our border because people have lost the fear of crossing it. So, of course, with the new situation, we need a new process. So obviously we need to do something about it. I mean, I'm a sensible centrist, Steve, so I would put all immigration at 0 at this point, legal and illegal, and that's the sensible position. But yeah, we've got to obviously work with France on this. Some ex-military people I spoke to said just get people in a helicopter, dump them on the French beach, let them deal with it. The more sort of mature take is we have to just give France a load of money to help us deal with the situation. But yeah, obviously we've got to speed up the process. We've got people in hotels costing $5 million a day in taxpayers' money. It's madness.
It's extraordinary.
You'd think with that much money available to spend on the problem, you could make people maybe process 2 a week. Just a step in the right direction, just some
Or maybe even just send them all to Glastonbury glamping. I don't know. Have we got enough money to do that?
That sounds horrible from my point of view as well. Oh, chemical toilets. Sticking with Thursday's Mail, Nick, and tax doesn't have to be taxing if you make the same kind of losses that Donald Trump makes.
Yeah, so Trump paid $0, that's my favourite amount to pay, by the way, in federal tax in 2020, and his taxes weren't audited by IRS until 2019. He'd previously implied they'd been audited, so that's why he couldn't, do anything tax-wise, like, hey, I'm being audited, and they're saying he wasn't. And if you saw that Dave Chappelle monologue recently, he talked about Trump and this genius tactic he did in the debate with Hillary, where Hillary was like, you don't pay your tax. And Trump was like, that makes me smart. Then he said, and by the way, Hillary, you could change these tax laws, but you and your friends benefit from them as well. Mic drop. I mean, I'm not trying to do whataboutism here, Steve, although I don't care if I am. Let's be honest. Who pays more tax than they want? Like big tech companies, and they're lefties mainly, they don't pay any tax, famously. No one wants to pay more tax. Now, the question is, did Congress have a legitimate legislative, I can almost say that, purpose for obtaining Trump's tax returns, or are they just doing it to shame him? This is what Mike Cernovich said on Twitter, and I thought it was very astute. They're doing it to try and say, oh, look, Trump's bad. But the question is, has he actually done anything illegal, which wasn't clear to me.
So he's just got a good accountant.
He could just have a great accountant. Jimmy Carr's accountant,
question, though, about why lie, then? So if you think you're a man of principle, and the principle is if the law means I get away with paying no tax, I'm paying no tax. Here, have a look at my... Or you even say, no, I don't have to show you my tax returns. Why should I? That's honest and a point of principle. But, oh, I'm being audited. Oh, I can't right now, is a lie. Why do the lie if the principle's worth defending?
That does seem odd, but I think it's Cressler's turn, so I'm going to let...
Do you think it's just because it's not good PR? Does it look poor? Is it so damaging that he doesn't want to talk about it?
Yeah, well, I think Trump, as I was saying, with Trump, with his base and the way he is, he could have totally said, no, you're not seeing them. I think he could have pulled that off. But you're right, it was odd that he said they were being audited if they weren't. That does seem a very... Maybe Trump didn't know. Maybe he thought they were being audited. You don't really know with Trump, do you? He maybe thought they were. I'm not sure, Steve, about that. It doesn't seem great. I do think, though, if you want to get someone, and they obviously want to get Trump, they've got the FBI against him, they've got the IRS... If you're someone like Trump, a billionaire with like multiple businesses, there's probably something you can find. Didn't they just hire 87,000 IRS agents in America? If you want to use the IRS against someone, you can find something, right?
I don't know. I mean, every single president before has been audited every year. I didn't know that until I read this article. But they get audited all the time. So if all of them have managed to not have enough skeletons in the closet for it to be a problem, why should Trump be different?
Yeah, maybe that's a reasonable point. Do you know what? I mean, people say, oh, I'm just a Trump fanboy. I'm just very objective. But do you know what's interesting as well, Steve? Trump has actually lost money since being president, whereas Obama had about $3 million net worth before becoming president and now has $70 million. How has that happened?
You think he's definitely lost it?
Huh?
He hasn't just given it somebody who...
His official net worth has gone down, let's say. But it's just funny. Well, I feel like Trump did take a sacrifice in his lifestyle, whereas I think people like Hillary and, these people seem to come out with a lot of money from... Or Bill Clinton, people like that.
I mean, he was making a loss for loads of years on the run-up to it and during. So, yeah. Thursday's Guardian next, Cressida, and Elon Musk is resigning from Twitter because people online told him to. If I did what people online told me to, then I'd put my back out.
We wouldn't want that. The NHS can't handle it.
Yeah.
Elon Musk said on Tuesday that he will not step down as chief executive of the company until he can find a suitable replacement. So that's the big question, isn't it? Who's going to replace Elon Musk? He thinks it has to be somebody who's not going to kill Twitter. So there's loads of suggestions. Have you got any suggestions, Nick?
Well, no, that's the big problem. I've suggested myself, but it would be, if I took it over, it would just be a kind of reign of terror, just banning everyone I don't like brutally.
Would you?
Yeah. No principles at all. It would just be pure vengeance.
Just based on what you... Brilliant. OK. Yeah. Well, they're having financial problems. So at first I thought maybe Martin Lewis. You aware of this?
Money-saving expert.
Yeah, or David Dickinson. I don't know. He's good at finding cash, isn't he? But no, I don't think so. So at the moment, the company this is Musk. He says the company is running as though you're a plane heading towards the ground at high speed with the engines on fire and the controls just don't work, which is amazing. So they need to make more money. How about Jeremy Clarkson taking over?
Yeah, to see if it could be even more unpopular. That would be
Maybe Ant and Dec could get involved and could turn it into a reality TV show. I don't know.
It's got to be someone who understands the political gravity of the situation. See, Musk is good at running companies, but does he understand? Well, he understands, but who else is going to really face down the deep state? And the political pressure that is put on Musk. That's the question. People are saying, will it be Jared Kushner because he met up with him? But that seemed to be probably just a rumor. He offered it. Lex Friedman offered to do it. Lex Friedman is a kind of. It seemed to be serious, but he's been attacked even just since offering, and he's had his Wikipedia changed, and they've taken out the fact that he was at MIT. So if you step up and do this role, you will be attacked by political opponents, obviously.
Probably why I'm not going to do it. Finishing this section is The Sun, Nick, and it's bad news, not for me because I don't share my Netflix password, but it's bad news for the person whose password I am using.
Yes, millions of Netflix users warn they could be breaking the law by sharing passwords. Now, I admit I've been using Andrew Doyle's password for years, but I just enter his house when he's not there. So he's not really sharing, is it? He's left it on. He's asking for autocomplete is a problem. But it sort of reminds me, this idea that it could be illegal. The Intellectual Property Office is saying it now might be illegal. And Netflix used to say love is sharing a password in 2017. Now that's love is illegal, basically. It's an illegal kind of love, potentially. But it wasn't totally clear if they are breaking the law or not. It seems like they might be, but it's not totally clear. And they're going to crack down on it in 2023 anyway. It's one of those sort of, if it is illegal, it's one of those silly illegal things. Like, those old adverts about pirating. You wouldn't steal a car. And you're like, no, that's because it's different. Yeah. I'd totally steal a film, but I wouldn't steal a car. I mean, I don't, but I'm very special. But it's one of those sort of silly laws that people are going to ignore, right?
What happens if you
can
take your laptop round to Andrew Doyle's house?
Good question.
They keep talking about households.
Great evening doing something else. Well, the internet's got on it.
Andrew never. That was a joke, because Andrew's never let me in his house and never will.
Right. Okay.
So basically, just get your own password, though.
Well, this is the thing. It's $4.99 a month now. I think that's.
I'm just cancelling. I mean, I re-upped it to watch this blooming Harry thing for work, which was awful, and now I'm just cancelling again. Have you got Netflix?
No, not at the moment. Every now and again, I dive back in, and then I
borrow Nick's password.
Well,
for now, yeah, I've still got it.
Well, we've reached the tipping point into delirium. Join us in 2 minutes for hypocritical comedians, homophobic telescopes, and hypersensitive hymns.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, kicking off with Thursday's Independent, Cressida. And a comedian who once did something that caused them some sort of problems, is what it says. Now, well, let's talk about what's happening with Clarkson, I believe is the story we're dealing here.
Jeremy Clarkson won't face police probe over Meghan column, Met Chief says. So this is after he made his Meghan joke. Speaking to LBC Radio on Wednesday, Sir Mark Rowley, said, legal lines are only crossed generally when things are said that are intended or likely to stir up or incite violence. I don't think this is one of those cases, but of course we will keep a close eye on it. I'm not quite sure what he means by that.
Incredibly sinister.
I mean, to me, this is just another Joe Brandon the milkshake story, isn't it?
Yeah, well, except she sort of got away with it in large degree, not completely, but...
Right. So it's somebody's made a poor taste joke and... Well, he's not going to be losing his job. It looks like he's going to carry on. So on Monday, Clarkson responded to the controversy, writing on Twitter, "Oh dear, I'd rather put my foot in it." Brilliant. And then on Tuesday morning, the Independent Press Standards Organisation said Clarkson's newspaper column has become its most complained about article.
Nice.
Nick, would you say it is an offensive thing to say?
So, Steve, it was a bit offensive. I've called it a crude and misjudged satire, but that is what it is, a satire nonetheless. Anyone who's seen Game of Thrones knows immediately. Now, if you haven't seen it, maybe take it seriously. It's obviously a satire of Game of Thrones. We've gone absolutely mad. We've got the police talking about keeping a close eye on it for a joke, Steve, an obvious joke. Clarkson was also lampooning himself with the sheer exaggerated nature of his anger. He talked about, well, you know, it's not quite the same as Rose West. He obviously doesn't think Meghan is comparable to Rose West. He obviously doesn't want to literally see her paraded around the street with excrement thrown at her. Hence, it's comedy, it's exaggeration, it's satire. And it's amazing we're doing this. Chris Packham, the naturalist guy, is that a nudist? What's the one? Naturalist. Key difference. He said, is there any sort of justice? If there was any sort of justice, there would be laws that would jail him. He wants Clarkson jailed for this. Do you understand? For a column. This is mental. Chris Packham works with caterpillars who have higher IQs than him. Caroline Noakes, an alleged Conservative MP, said it's medieval language. Yes, because it's Game of Thrones. It's set in olden times, Caroline. It's a fictitious olden time. Wait till she finds out about the dragons. Also, the character, it wasn't advocating that. The character in Game of Thrones, it was being treated horribly by a religious cult, extremist cult, which these people resembled to me, and the people who did that to her got a horrible comeuppance and were all killed. So it was never... So when Clarkson does it, he's satirising that. It's called parody, guys. Kate Osborne talked about it as well, and talked about abusive white men with power and a huge media platform. One, why you're being sexist and racist. Two, as if Meghan doesn't have power and a huge media platform. It's called Netflix. So people have gone absolutely mental, Steve.
Did he have a responsibility to at least mention Game of Thrones in the column so that people got the reference? Because without context, that reference is just hoping for violence on someone. If you don't know the bigger context, like, why would you want excrement smeared on someone?
Yeah, I mean, except that it's obviously a comic column throughout. Doesn't it kill jokes slightly, Steve, to explain them? Just in brackets, this is a joke about Game of Thrones.
And it's a widely known show, isn't it? I never thought I'd be standing defending Clarkson, but here I am.
Well, yeah, and this is where we are in a weird culture where you sort of pick sides. But did you see Daniela Nudge on Twitter said, let's put cancel culture in full motion. She called for him to be banned from everything. They've gone from cancel culture...
He should be banned from everything, but that's just my take.
Right, they've gone from cancel culture doesn't exist to now it's back, and they're just openly saying, let's do it. You know, it's like that meme, like, OK, it exists, but it's a good thing. I'm just so amazed by all this. I'm amazed.
So another entertainer who's managed to make the news in The Independent, Joe Lycett, may well have made something of a tricky move here, Cressida.
Yeah, that's right. So Joe Lycett's responded to reports. He's previously done some gigs in Qatar. We all know that he threatened to burn £10,000 if David Beckham... Did you want Beckham not to go at all? He wanted him to pull out?
Yeah.
It turns out he didn't actually do that in the end. It was a hoax, and he did donate the money to an LGBTQ+ charity. But yeah, he's been caught out by The Sun for gigging in Qatar. But he makes the point that this is not new information. He's written about it in his own book. So yeah.
Yeah. Is it that much of a catch out? Because a lot of the newspapers are trying to say, like, he did this Beckham thing and he dared to take money from Qatar. The timeline's the other way around. Ages ago did that gig when, you know, comedians, we all need money.
I don't think it's a great gotcha. I've done these same gigs, but it's not hypocrisy for me because I agree with Qatar anyway on everything, so it's fine for me. But it is a bit different. It was a while. I'll be really honest. When I was offered this gig, I didn't even know Doha was in Qatar. That's how I was like, whatever, I'll just do the gig. Brilliant. These were gigs. They're actually run by English people who live in Dubai. It's not really. So I don't think it's this massive hypocrisy because it's not being paid by the state in Qatar. I think it's different having a World Cup where you're sort of saying, here we are in front of the world. We have this World Cup. A bit different from an individual comedian who at the time wasn't really known doing a gig where no one would have really seen him do it. You could argue, because he's gone so hard at Beckham, there's a certain level of hypocrisy. But,
I think people don't like the smugness. It was all a bit, dare I say it, virtue signalling.
Right.
But he makes the point that he did the gigs in 2015. He says, I reckon that if a popular comedian from those days, e.g. Shane Ritchie, had shredded a few £100 to persuade me not to go, it might have made a difference. So he's saying, it's my actions now that are influencing people. I didn't have a Joe Lycett to look up to. So...
But also, there is sports washing, there's not comedy washing, which is a shame, because we could make some money at this. Let's move on to the Times now, Nick. And is the James Webb Telescope homophobic? And does that mean that it won't look at Uranus? Oh, I see what they were trying to do.
Yeah, this is a homophobia row over James Webb Telescope, and it's absolutely ludicrous. They're saying the name James Webb should not appear in scientific journals because of claims that Webb, who ran NASA as the Cold War space race reached a crescendo in the 1960s, was a bigot who oversaw a purge of gay staff from the US government. But then people are saying, well, no, actually, he didn't particularly do that. He has no particular link to that, to firing people who are gay and so on. And so he actually didn't. It's this absolute mad stuff where we have to take everyone's name off and erase history, this year zero kind of thinking. We want everyone to change and be like, have perfect morals in the past and be like we are now, even though our morals now are stupid and wrong anyway, most of them anyway, especially people who are doing this. And they say, we're very much aware of the report. We've looked at it with great interest, and our council is considering the best way to respond. Just ignore it. Just ignore it because it's stupid. Why do we have to rename everything because people didn't have a perfect record? Who may actually have not even done anything. It's just so annoying.
I don't think he did anything out of the ordinary for his time, did he?
Right.
And they're saying there's an overarching principle. Merely because the allegations are historic doesn't mean that we're any less concerned about them. It makes me a lot less concerned about them. If this was happening this week, I'd have a lot to say about it.
Yeah. And also, why are we naming stuff in space after dead people? Because the dead person doesn't care and the thing in space doesn't care.
Yeah, but this thing can see back into the... It can see so much light that it can see the whole of time.
It can see infrared radiation from almost the Big Bang. Imagine if you plot the curve of how racist things must have been that far back.
Exactly. Think what it's going to uncover.
Yeah. Well, the Daily Mail now has a story that includes religion and being inclusive. So that's the blue touch paper lit. Let's see how angry Nick gets.
Well, yes, it is very annoying, and it is hot in here, so I'm going to get even more angry. So, furious church changed lyrics of God rest ye merry gentlemen to be more inclusive. And the original says, God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Saviour was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Very solid Christian lyrics, but they've been changed. The second verse has been changed to, God rest you also women who by men have been erased, through history ignored and scorned, defiled and displaced. Dodgy rhyme. And the third verse, God, by the way, and it's not even true, this is myth that the whole of history has just been this patriarchal, endless patriarchal oppression where women didn't exist, isn't it? And then the third verse, God rest you, queer and questioning, your anxious hearts be still. And it's including queer and questioning people. And I question this, so I think I've become a questioning person over this story.
But also, I guess the one demographic missed out is gentlemen who aren't merry. So I think you've missed out twice there, Nick.
Yes, you're right. Unmerry gentlemen who are furious at all these stories I have to cover. This is the Holy Trinity in Loughborough. Let's name and shame Leicestershire. And the person doing this has backed this whole thing, Rachel Bryn's search. But other people, Sam Margrave, member of Church General Synod, saying absolutely disgusting, an act of worship to our Lord and Saviour is being used to push political ideology contrary to Church of England teaching. Correct. And Reverend Matthew Firth says that it's a woke, unbiblical agenda, and that is also accurate.
Do you think this is going to help get more people into the church? Do you think it's making it... Because I find it infuriating, but do you want more friends at church?
No, it's a disaster. This is why the church is falling apart. It's why people don't take it seriously. They're losing numbers. The ones that get the numbers, the ones that are thriving, are like Latin Catholic masses where no one understands what's going on. It's all incredibly serious. And they're the ones that are doing well because no one wants this watered-down woke stuff. You can get it in the rest of the culture. You don't need it in the church.
It's not what church is
What
for.
is Latin for LGBTQ? In fact, in Latin, that's probably a number.
I went to comprehensive school, Steve, so I have no idea. I don't even know what Latin is.
The Metro Cressida, and you can't say anything these days to women.
You can't.
It's loud and sexually aggressive in Ilford.
Man who heckled woman becomes one of the first to be fined for catcalling. So this man, enforcement officers witnessed a woman being harassed and detained the man responsible. He was then given a £100 fine in Ilford, East London, on the 16th of December. It doesn't say what he shouted.
Yeah.
I'm desperate to know.
And we can't shout it tonight because it goes against Ofcom rules, even if we knew.
But we'll never know. In case you don't know what catcalling is, I don't know if you're familiar with the art form.
Big fan.
It says it's often done loudly or raucously by the perpetrator in a public setting which is designed to make someone uncomfortable. And catcalling is different to complimenting, Nick. I don't know if you know that.
Isn't it just very loud complimenting by builders?
Well, it says that complimenting is often done by friends who are known to one another already.
So I can't compliment you if I don't know you, because then it's catcalling? Or does it have to be loud and raucous as well?
I mean, but everyone knows the sneakiest catcalling is done sneakily. It's not raucous.
Yeah, but isn't it all pointless? I mean, there is an argument to say no one has ever leant off the side of some scaffolding and whistled, said, all right, darling, and then now they're married. It's not going to work out for
It's just a way of saying, hi, I'm a loser. I mean, I think of catcallers as victims. I really do. Why aren't we supporting them through their trauma? It's clearly the result of being a massive muppet.
Should have fundraised to repay his £100.
Well, I like that point. I think if anyone was going to make that point, you'd have assumed it was going to be me, but it was Cressida against all odds. But
I mean, they say we're reclaiming our streets for local communities and ending the culture of misogyny that starts with harassment and escalates to violence. Does it?
No,
it doesn't.
Does it
just escalate to being lonely? I think they're very, very lonely people.
And yeah, it's authoritarian nonsense. You're going to get these fines. The only people it's going to help are whoever gets that money. And it's authoritarianism without the safety. It's petty little things that make people more miserable. But does it actually lead to safety? Do you feel any more safe about this, Cressida? It's like you still have to be concerned when you walk home late at night. It's got nothing to do with Clarkson. It's got nothing to do with catcalling. There are nutters out there. You've got to be very careful about them. And none of this stuff's going to stop them.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I agree. I think it won't. It's not like the men who aren't going to catcall. They already know. Don't do it. The people that do, I worry that things like this don't make any impact whatsoever on the people who are going to do it anyway.
For balance, Ilford has a great Wilco. A quantifiably quick break now before the final fling with Christmas parties. Traumatised plus-size models. Great time to cough. And what does this mean?
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, the Daily Mail. Nick, and as a self-employed person, I had to snog myself at my Christmas do, but for someone else, they've got a different problem.
That must have been hard, Steve. Yeah, my boss is furious. I can't make the work Christmas party. That's not me saying that, Steve, because I wasn't invited to the Christmas party. I had the opposite problem, that I wanted to go but wasn't invited. I was told it wasn't for talent, then found out it was. It just wasn't for me, apparently.
Huge
but
with this, isn't it?
I may have been too talented to go. May have been the problem. But this is someone who couldn't make the Christmas party and got in also. And of course, it's inevitably on Mumsnet, like all sort of minor problems are. But this was terrible. So she lived 100 miles away. Her car broke down. She couldn't get someone except on that day. It cost 180 quid and all this, and she couldn't get it fixed except on that day. So she calls up and says, look, I can't make the Christmas party, which frankly sounded lame anyway. It was going to be dinner at the office, a cake decorating competition, and then a quiz. I mean, not
Do you believe her story, though? I just thought this stank of a lie.
I believe this bit.
Too much information.
She starts talking. She called up her boss with her husband there, and she said at first she literally just kept giving grunts. That's what I believed, because that's too weird to be made up. Why are you grunting at your employees? And then went on about how this was a very important event and I should make every effort to be there. Now I'm going to risk, after I've supported women a lot on the show, I'm going to risk a bit of misogyny here and say a man wouldn't care if you're coming to his party or not. And I've never hosted a party, but I wouldn't care. Whereas is that a female thing to say, like, I really care if you show up at the party? I'm going to get in trouble for that.
Maybe, but I mean, I totally empathise with this. I think it's painful. She says the CEO hasn't really spoken about much else for the past few weeks, and it's been a bit of a bore. I mean, works Christmas dues. It's like bullying, isn't it? Making you go. Like, don't take my soul as well. You already have 40 hours a week.
It's a hideous idea. Well, any socialising with work people. These are people that you only know because you are paid to know them.
Exactly.
And you want more time with them?
I've been trying to get away from comedians for 11 years, and here I am. I come to do a news show, and they're here again.
We'll turn up.
It's mad.
They've all been trying to get hold of you, Nick.
Thank you very much. So, Cressida, the other thing is, she only had to come in once every 2 weeks. She worked virtually. Now, some people say, well, that means you should definitely at least come to a Christmas party. But the other argument is, I'm barely here. Why don't I hear you come to the Christmas party?
Yeah, she doesn't know them. She's probably... Loads of people are anxious about these sort of things. Let her off.
Yeah.
Move on to the Daily Mail, Cressida, and normally it's the passenger who has to pay the airline if something's overweight, but not in this case.
Not in this case. Airline to pay for psychotherapy for Brazilian plus-size model. So a court has ordered the airline to pay for therapy for this model, who claimed she was stopped from boarding a flight because she was too big for her seat. Social media influencer Juliana Nahim, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Nehma, 38, claimed earlier this year that she was stopped from boarding a Qatar Airways flight because she was too large, and she accused the airline of discriminating against her due to her size. And she's won.
Yeah, well, the court ordered them to pay for psychotherapy. Why not a dietitian? I mean, is that a personal trainer?
It says psychotherapy to come to terms with the distressed cause. Like, come to terms with maybe going on a diet.
I know. The lawyer described it as a milestone in the fight against prejudice. It's a milestone in the collapse of society. I mean, look, she says, oh, it hurts me so much to remember because I blame myself. Well, you are to blame. That's accurate. Yeah. Look, I'm not unsympathetic. I've been attacked. I was attacked at school for being overweight. The other day, Lewis Schaefer came up to me and said, you're fat. Why are you fat? And you know what? I said, Lewis, you know what? I am a bit fat. I was a stone lighter in May. I looked much better. You're absolutely right. And I took it on board. Well, so I've no problem with people being a bit overweight. I'm not attacking her for that. Purely attacking her for her personality and the fact that she's said it's the airline's fault and they have to give her money. It's like, no, it's nothing wrong with you, but it's just, it's your fault though, isn't it?
I know sometimes if people are a certain size, the airline requires them to buy 2 seats, which you presume
that's pretty
next
much
to each other.
What they tried to do. They tried to make her go in, I think it's executive class, because there's more space.
Yeah.
She wasn't having it. She wasn't having it at all. The thing
I bet they wish they'd have just given her an executive class seat for free.
I bet they do now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? Go on.
A health and safety issue.
Well, of course, I want to get Steve's doing it. He's trying to be neutral as the host.
I just love the idea of getting an upgrade. So, yeah, if I could turn up there and just, make sure I wear something smaller so I look fatter and get a free big seat, game on. Daily Star, Nick, and not having legs doesn't stop you doing MMA.
Yeah, now this guy is the exact opposite of the previous person. So, athlete with no legs wins pro MMA fight after threat to rip rival's throat out. And I've watched the video, and this guy with no legs takes down the other person. And he says, I'm exceptional because I have a drive, and I live by the mantra, no excuses.
There it is, look at that.
Oh, there he is. And I push myself forward every day. So this guy's all about no excuses. And I think if anyone's going to give an excuse, it'd be this guy. Yeah, so he came in and took him down in this kind of grapple. And Conor McGregor has pointed out, it's hard to beat him because you can't, if you punch downward, it's weaker. You can't really grapple him. I mean, you could just sort of kick him, couldn't you? But apparently not. So Connor's saying the only way you can beat him is some sort of strike that I don't understand, some sort of frames only, frame to strike. You've got to get him in kind of like right in front of him and hit him, I think is what he's saying.
Very technical, didn't it? It looked like he couldn't get his legs around, because he didn't have any legs to get them around.
Yes.
It's also probably an argument that your best move is to lose, because even if you win...
Bad PR.
Yeah, they're ribbing down the pub afterwards.
Yes.
That's why I don't do MMA.
That's the reason.
Yeah,
OK,
main
brilliant.
reason. Daily Mail, Cressida, and thinking about past relationships is apparently good for you. And, I just did.
I feel... How do you feel now?
Pretty good, actually. Vivid memory.
So reflecting on memories can improve your current relationship. So the idea is that experts are claiming that thinking about happy times with your exes could help resolve current festive feuds. That's very counterintuitive, isn't it? That sounds like a surefire way to get into a lot of trouble. But psychologists at the University of Kansas asked volunteers to reflect on nostalgic memories with a former partner. And this subsequently made them think more positively about their current relationship, as it made them aware of how much they've grown since then. This is your area, isn't it? You love to think about personal growth and...
Yeah, I'm glad you recognise that. It's a bit weird. It reminds me of the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I mean, their thing was, let's just erase all memories. I think it might be better, actually. But my question here was, they sort of had an increased satisfaction and positive feeling from remembering good moments, but couldn't it just be from remembering, like, any good moment? You know, wouldn't that make you feel better in general? I wasn't totally convinced by this.
Yeah, like, think of something nice.
Certainly, I'd say the good advice would be, if you are going to enjoy detailed memories of previous lovers, maybe don't mention it to your current one, because I imagine, Christmas is full of rows anyway. You might as well tuck in and enjoy it, but that's not the row you want to have. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah, they do say, though, that lurking is not good. Don't lurk on your, ex's social media profiles and stuff, Cressida. So that's bad for you in the article, OK?
Thanks.
So stop that immediately.
I thought you meant it's not good to let the feelings lurk. I thought you were going to the Jungian shadow...
Online lurking. Have you not heard of it?
No, I hadn't. That's a technical term, is it?
Yeah, being a lurker.
No, I didn't know that was... So what that means, I call it face stalking.
So you do it, you just got different nomenclature. Oh.
You also have to be careful about, don't do it on a phone, I learned, on the tube, because I once then dropped the phone, I picked it up and realised I'd favourited something.
I thought you meant she was going to be there, on the next carriage.
Back from that favourite. Into the metro now, Nick, and children are using emojis for drugs, sad face.
Yes, darker secret side of emoji, Steve. It's not all fun and games with emojis, and what they mean to children revealed by police. So this is weird, yeah. A list of examples include using a strawberry, dog, cherries, cake, ice cream, or leaves to indicate cannabis, which is basically legal anyway, so I don't even know why they need to hide it. An aubergine or peach could represent sex, Steve. An alien or mask might mean MDMA. Sounds a bit like brass eye, this, doesn't it? Meanwhile, a blowfish, petrol pump, or snowflake can represent cocaine, while a fist or rocket might mean how powerful the substances are. And a horse can mean ketamine, which makes more sense. Yeah. But my problem is, what if you're just describing a very fast horse who likes strawberries, and you're like, rocket horse strawberries, and they're like, you get arrested? I was like, no, I was talking about...
OK, you're not a young person. Haven't young people and drug dealers always done this, though? This is just...
Yeah, like in The Wire, when they sent the clocks.
So in the old days, you had to draw a picture of the horse.
No, you had to have a word.
Oh.
I mean, it's not like... Haven't people always had code words for naughty
When I was
things?
in the game, we used burners and we chucked them, and occasionally, you just send a picture.
Oh, so you weren't a young person, you were a dealer?
Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant.
I suppose it was always going to happen, isn't it? A new code comes along, and then now we know this, then they'll come up with a new code, because now, I'll be trying to send pictures, see what happens, and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I love how the police are trying to not worry parents, but they're also saying, we're very aware that checking phones could break down this trust between a parent and child. So we're not suggesting you check their phones.
Well, don't do that. Thank you very much for our newspaper review there, tearing them to shreds. My panel, Cressida, Big Dog and Nick Big Dixon. I've been Stephen Allen. Join us tomorrow. Andrew Doyle will be hosting with Josh Howie and Paul Cox. Good night.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Tens of thousands of ambulance workers are striking today. If people die, whose fault is it? Is it the ambulance workers, the unions, or is it the government? That's our moral debate this evening. We'll have a look at Suella Braverman contemplating using old cruise ships to house Channel migrants. Is it really going to happen? And Andrew Maguire joins me on Talking Pints. Our money used to be backed by gold. It hasn't been for the last 50 years. What has that meant for our money? And what will happen now to the price of gold? All of that coming up in a moment. First, though, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Ambulance unions have been reacting angrily after the government accused them of making a conscious choice to harm patients by going out on strike.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? When?
Well, the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, claims unions are refusing to work with the government at a national level on how paramedics will cover emergency calls during strike action. The Unite union says the Health Secretary's comments are a blatant lie. The GMB union describes it as insulting, and Unison's General Secretary says Mr Barclay is refusing to even discuss pay.
We sit down in a room, you have a bit of give and take on both sides. But I'm getting nothing from him or from this government. All they're saying to me is, we can't negotiate about pay. And where does that leave us? One of the reasons the ambulance service, the NHS, is in such a dire state is because they haven't invested in the workforce. So people leave. Those who are left are under increasing pressure. These people don't get meal breaks. They hardly get a day off. They work excessive overtime because it's the only way the service can run.
Christina McAnay, but the Health Secretary maintains the government is trying to work constructively with the unions.
Clearly, we will need to look at the data from today to see whether the exemptions that the trade unions have promised materialise. They've said, on the one hand, they want to cause maximum disruption, but on the other hand, that they don't want to cause harm to patients. So we've tried to work constructively with the trade unions, but of course, if we see significant patient harm, then as a government we will need to look at what is done in terms of minimum service levels.
A man who admitted murdering his pregnant partner and 3 children in Derbyshire will spend the rest of his life in jail. Damien Bendall was given a whole life order for killing Terry Harris, her children Lacey and John Paul Bennett, and Lacey's friend Connie Gent in Killamarsh in September last year. The prosecutor told the court they were brutal, vicious attacks. International news, and Ukraine's president has arrived in Washington in the United States for talks with Joe Biden, his first foreign trip since the start of Russia's invasion. Volodymyr Zelensky will also address Congress and hold a number of bilateral meetings to help strengthen Ukrainian resilience and defence capabilities. Earlier this week, the US confirmed a new package of military aid for the country worth £1.6 billion, including a Patriot missile system to help Ukraine defend its infrastructure against Russian attacks. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Now it's time for Farage.
Good evening. Well, today it's ambulance strikes. Tens of thousands of ambulance workers, paramedics and indeed call handlers are on strike across the country today. There are some areas that have not gone on strike, but the vast majority have, and the Army have been filling in as best they possibly can, but a very difficult job to do. You know, even before these strikes, I bet there's not a single one of you that hasn't heard a story, that has not heard a story over the course of the last year or so, where they've been somewhat horrified by the sheer amount of time it's taken for an ambulance to come. It is part of broken Britain. It's not working in the way that it used to. We're going to cut. I'm going to stop. We're going to cut live to the White House, to President Biden and Ukraine's Zelensky. OK, so this is the first visit that Volodymyr Zelensky has made since the invasion last February of Ukraine. He's there at the White House with Joe Biden. And Biden, very much, although I think to be fair, whether you agree with the policy or not, it was Boris Johnson that led the way in terms of Western support for Ukraine. But Biden has gone along with that. So this is a very significant moment. As I've said to you before on this show, you know, all this media telling you that the Ukrainians are winning the war, the Russians have withdrawn, well, I'd be very, very careful and cautious about all of that. The fact they've fallen back behind, the Russians have fallen back behind their defensive position, does not mean the Russians are beaten. And it may well be that the Ukrainians are in for a very long, dark, cold, hungry winter without power and possibly even without enough water too. So we will, as the evening goes on, follow that meeting and go live, cut live at any moment to a press conference that may happen. Back to strikes. So things are wrong within the ambulance service. It's not been working. It is part of broken Britain. I was a bit shocked, really, to hear the junior Minister, for Health, Will Quince, telling us, don't leave your house, don't do anything dangerous. Well, I almost thought, gosh, they're putting another lockdown on us. But it was the comments, I think, of the Health Secretary, Stephen Barclay, that really have sparked a bit of public debate. He says the ambulance workers are making a conscious choice to inflict harm on the British people. So are we back to 1980s style wars between trade unions and Conservative ministers? And if people die today, where does the fault lie? It's a big moral question. This isn't just about a factory closing down with a row over pay disputes and what may happen to productivity. This really is about people's lives. Earlier on today, GB News were out at Waterloo talking to striking ambulance workers.
Not trying to put people's lives at risk. We're trying to make sure that people are looked after properly. If you desperately need an ambulance, call an ambulance, and if the service can't provide it, we will go from the picket line.
This is happening every day. People are dying because we haven't got the resources to send, we haven't got the nurses to give the care in the hospital. So it's not just about today, it's about what's been happening for weeks and years. People need to start listening to us in government.
Blame is firmly at the door of the government. We've heard reports again this week of patients dying because we haven't been able to turn out ambulance quick enough to them. We haven't got sufficient resources available to us and available to the public to keep them safe on a daily basis. This is as best that we can do. Our crews are run ragged. They are absolutely at breaking point, as are all of the services across the NHS. And there's nothing else left for us to do but to take action.
Now, I understand, you know, some of those workers there, and of course, we're talking to strikers, so of course they're going to take an anti-government position. But it was interesting, wasn't it? The woman in the middle there who said this isn't just about today, it's about what's happening to the ambulance service, and I do give credence to that. However, these people are involved in a vital public service. I'm not sure being insulted by a Conservative Secretary for Health actually helps. But if people die today, whose fault is it? Well, I'm afraid to say, ultimately, I don't think people like ambulance workers should go out on strike, whatever their grievances may be. That is my view. You give me your view, please. Farage at gbnews.uk. Now, joining me to debate this is somebody who was around in the 1980s when he was Mayor of London, actually, and he was a very busy man. Ken Livingstone, pleasure to see you. Is this back to the future? Is this a Tory government?
Well, look, this last 12 years under this government, we've seen public spending cut more than at any time in my lifetime. I mean, you go back, Tory Prime Ministers in the 60s and 70s wouldn't have been cutting back on NHS spending. But under this government, in 12 years, they're now spending 18% less on the NHS than if they carried on with Labour spending.
That is just not true.
It is true.
No, hang on, hear me through. You know, we are now spending 12% of GDP on the health sector, all right? 10 years ago, 11 years ago, we were spending 8%. It's not a lack of money, is it?
It is a lack of money. We've got thousands of job, I mean, 60,000 nurses vacancies and things like that. This government, I mean, this last 12 years has made cuts in public spending, not just the NHS, that no Tory government in the decades before would have dared to do. And I think, hey, this is appalling. I totally support those workers going on strike, because in real terms, their pay in the last decade has come down by almost up to 20%.
I may sympathise with you on the pay.
Don't get, we're the sixth richest nation in the world. We don't have to treat people
I
like
have
this.
some sympathy with you on the pay issue, and I said so last night about the nurses, although to ask for 19%, I thought in their case was unreasonable, but equally the government needs to give more in this negotiation. So I do have some sympathy on the pay. However, if you are involved in a vital public service where the immediacy of people's life is concerned, is it right to go on strike?
Of course, it's a bloody nightmare. I mean, but what else have they got to do? This government's been squeezing their pay year by year by year, and it's triggered this strike. This strike isn't because the workers want to go on strike, because they've got no choice now. I mean, lots of them aren't able to pay their rent. I mean, literally, in my lifetime, there's never been a government as bad as this. It's made cuts that no previous Tory government, Edward Heath, wouldn't have done this.
I remember Ken Livingstone in the 1980s saying similar things about the Thatcher government.
Well, but she wouldn't have made cuts in the NHS. I mean, she did some pretty terrible things, like abolishing my council.
Well, I mean, some of us thought it was about, but you came back. But I'm going to repeat the point. We're putting more money into health than we ever did before. It may not have found its way into nurses' pockets or ambulance drivers' pockets.
But it's not keeping up with the need. This is the thing. I mean, literally, you look at Britain, we're getting older. More and more Brits are getting to be over 60, over 75. And, of course, immediately when you're my age, you have more health problems than you do when you're 45.
And mass immigration has led to our population exploding as well.
Well, yeah, but if we weren't doing that mass immigration, there'd be even more vacancies. I mean, we've got surgeons coming from Africa and Latin America to work here.
Final thought. if people die today directly as a result of this ambulance strike, whose fault is it?
This government.
All right, Ken Livingstone.
Cheers.
As robust as ever. But then that wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, Mary Jajewski is also not exactly a right-winger. She joins me down the line now from Sicily, and she's, columnist on The Independent, writes in The Spectator. And Mary, I read what you'd, said last week about nurses, and the point I think you were making is there are many other people working in refuse collection or other areas of public services who equally do important jobs but aren't going on strike. Am I right to interpret that?
Yes, that's certainly one of the big points that I was trying to make. And I have to say that I find that the government has a case here, or at least I think it does, and I think it's not making it at all well. I don't know whether it's reticent to make it, whether it doesn't really believe in its case, but it has a case, and I don't think it's making it.
Do you think when the Health Secretary, Stephen Barclay, says that ambulance workers are making a conscious choice to harm people, is language like that useful when it comes to settling a dispute?
Well, it's obviously not useful, just as it's not useful to advise people just before Christmas that really going out and getting drunk is an irresponsible thing to do because they might have to call an ambulance. None of these things are very helpful. But the temperature has risen to the point where there are those emotions on either side. And one thing that I find very difficult to understand is why, after all these years, it's still the government that NHS workers, whether they're nurses, doctors, or ambulance people, that it's the government that they want to talk to, and they feel neglected because the government sort of won't immediately drop everything and talk to them on their terms. I don't understand why that should be. Why should they not be talking to NHS management? They seem to think they've got a sort of privileged hotline to the government, and they deserve to be spoken to by the government.
I agree with that. I have to say, I thought Stephen Barclay's comments that he would talk to the Royal College of Nursing, for example, but not about the issue they were striking on, namely pay, but other things, I thought that was wrong. So when we look at what's going on today, we will no doubt, there'll be stories in the tabloid press tomorrow of horrific wait times for ambulances, although we've had those, I'm afraid to say, pre-strike over the last year or two before. OK, I get it. You're analysing this. We've got two entrenched sides, no proper negotiations. Whose fault is it? Is it a bit of both if people die today, or do we apportion blame more to one side or the other?
I apportion blame much more to the people who are on strike. The people on strike, whether they're nurses or ambulance people, they are not a majority. More people are working than not working. I think that there should be legislation that limits the effect of strikes in what are essential public services. That includes transport, it includes nurses, it includes ambulance drivers. Those sort of regulations exist on the continent, they exist in places like France. I don't see why they shouldn't pertain in the UK as well.
Mary Jajewski, thank you very much indeed for putting that robust point of view. And I have to say, in conclusion, whilst I feel absolutely for people on relatively low pay at a time of rising inflation, the logic of what you say for a country that needs to continue to exist as a civilised society, I think the logic is absolutely on your side. Thank you for joining me this evening on GB News. Well, both sides of the argument put there. I hope you feel at home and in your cars listening on radio. We've done that as fairly as we possibly can. But this action that's been taken by ambulance workers is by no means unanimous. There are many people out there in that service who are working today. We need resolution. The government needs to be a bit more reasonable, I think, with all of these people. But still, I don't believe they should be on strike, and I really, really don't. Today, Home Secretary Suella Braverman discussed the possibility of putting cross-channel migrants on old, empty cruise ships. Is it feasible? Is it possible? We'll debate that in just a moment.
Join me, Calvin Robinson, on Christmas Eve and Day to explore how this special period has become a source of hope with an especially festive show. Expect Christmas carols, nativity readings, and interviews with special guests. And it's all filmed in a church for that proper Christmas feeling. Christmas, a message of hope at 2 p.m. on Christmas Eve and 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Christmas Day. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
So, if people die today, whose fault is it? Was the question that I asked you to respond to, and of course you have in great numbers. David has said all sides, unions, NHS management and government. Steve says both are to blame in different areas. Specifying those areas is important. It's not just black and white. Another viewer says, their fault, the NHS, and I guess you're lumping in the ambulance workers with that as well. And finally, all I've got time to take, John says, they're all to blame. This is an utter mess, and it's the public who have to pay the price. Well, look, you know, I've laid out my position on this for the last 2 nights. I don't think the government are being reasonable, and I think that's stupid, because I think if they were reasonable, they would very much get the vast majority of the public on their side. Some of the demands that are being made by the unions are wholly unrealistic. I sympathise with people on an individual basis, but I really don't think people working in areas like ambulance care should go on strike. That's my view. No doubt we're going to return to that over the course of the next few weeks. Now today, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, she was appearing before a committee in Parliament just as Parliament begins to wind down for the recess. And, of course, inevitably, we were talking about the cross-channel migrant problem, 45,000 people, just over, that have crossed this year. Unlikely, looking at the weather, that any more will come between now and the end of the year. But she was talking about the possibility of using cruise ships, old cruise ships, to house migrants. So I guess the idea would be the boats would get to our 12-mile line, people would be offloaded onto those cruise liners for processing. She discussed it as being a possibility. But is it actually ever really going to happen? Well, let me ask former Home Office advisor and serving Conservative councillor in Kent, Claire Purcell. Claire, I mean, I keep hearing this, flights to Rwanda, now we've got cruise ships in the English Channel, and all I actually see now are over 400 hotels that have been filled up during the course of a Conservative government in this country, talks of pontins at Camber Sands and butlins around the country. Is this plan that was discussed today feasible, or was she just, pardon the pun, floating the idea of cruise ships?
No, it isn't feasible. Let's all be honest with it. Where are you going to get these cruise ships from, for a start? How much money is that going to cost? If you just look at the practicalities of cruise ships, they can take 4,000 people if you're going to really put them in. Well, as you've just said, 45,000 have come across the Channel so far this year. So how many cruise ships are you going to have? Where are you going to put them? How are you staffing them? It's one of these policies, yet again, that has just been put out there because they feel it is the right thing to say, with absolutely nothing to back it up.
Well, you're a serving Conservative councillor. You know, we've had Priti Patel, who I personally like very much indeed, but Priti Patel over-promising, under-delivering. We got Suella, and my political highlight of the year, by the way, in this rather grim year, was her in the leadership contest, you know, saying live to camera, we're going to have to leave ECHR. I'm thinking, whoa, at last someone gets it, but now she's Home Secretary. That's not even on the agenda in a Sunak government, and he was asked about this yesterday, completely dodged the question. What does all of this mean for the Conservatives' prospects?
It's not good. I think you and I will both...
Not good?
That's probably as nice as I can be right now, because I'm facing re-election next year, and I can see that this is going to be a really tough battle. Everything I believe in as a Conservative is being flushed away currently, and as you've just said, we were looking to something more positive with the leadership contest, and it hasn't happened. You know, this is going to put the Conservatives back at least a decade. And what I worry about is people are going to go away from the Conservative Party, they're going to say, we're going to vote Labour, whatever. And the options aren't any better, especially if you look at immigration. You want to look at what Labour are saying on what they would do, because it isn't going to help. It's not what people want. So I think that the voting public are going to be really cautious when it comes to the ballot boxes when the next general election comes. But I think at local election time, they are going to punish the Conservative Party for things that are out of local councillors' control.
Now, there are thousands of seats up for election in May of next year, and it's up to 7,000 seats being contested right across the United Kingdom. I mean, can we face the scenario where Rishi Sunak's Conservatives do badly and there's another leadership challenge? or do you see him now as the settled leader?
I see him now as a settled leader. I think the Conservative Party would be very, very stupid to think they can depose another leader so quickly. I think this is now his to own until the next general election. It is going to be very, very painful, and the onus is now on the party to get this right. Whether they do that or not remains to be seen.
I mean, that Brexit vote, come on, that Brexit vote, that Midlands and north of England, the Red Wall, UKIP voters, Brexit Party voters, Brexit voters, 75% of whom voted for Boris Johnson's Conservatives in 2019. Unless you solve this cross-channel thing, they're gone, aren't they?
I think they are, but I think what's also interesting is to where they go. I'm not sure that they would revert back to Labour. I think perhaps smaller parties do have a chance to take over some seats in those red wall areas. Labour aren't going to give them the option. At the current time, Conservatives are struggling. So I think that's probably a slightly more interesting way of looking at it. But you are absolutely right. With this crisis at the moment, if the Conservatives don't get it right, they are gone at the next election.
And where's the opposition? You know, it seems to me that the Eurosceptics who had gone from being the fringe to being in control are back to being a fringe. It seems, I talked to you tonight, and I talked to other Conservatives who feel in despair, over the taking back control pledge with Brexit and where we are today. Have you guys just given up effectively?
The majority of us haven't, and that's what I find really hard. If you talk to local councillors, if you talk to the majority of MPs in Parliament, Conservative MPs, they absolutely haven't given up. It just feels that the Cabinet itself has closed the doors to any kind of conversation going on. Brexit is one of those things we have to get right. Absolutely. I was out there campaigning for it, as were you. I want to see it done. So does the 17 million people that voted for it.
But there's been a globalist coup, hasn't there? I mean, Hunt was put in, Sunak's been put in, our first ever Goldman Sachs Prime Minister. I mean, the globalists are now running the Conservatives. Mass immigration, be it legal or illegal, seems to be what they want.
Unfortunately, it feels very much like that. And what I want to see are other voices coming through. Unfortunately, the Cabinet is not made up of people that I would have had in there who would actively question and debate the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. There isn't enough of that. And unfortunately, every Prime Minister does it, surrounds himself by people that are going to say yes. And that is always a mistake.
I have to say, I think you're onto a loser. But I could be wrong. You must come back here after the May elections and we'll analyse what has happened to local Conservative councillors up and down the country. It's a big moment coming up in May. It's interesting. National media always underestimates the importance every year of these rounds of local elections. 2023 is a really big one. In a minute, we'll come back and talk about, it's almost unbelievable, but the collusion between the FBI and Twitter to suppress debate about Hunter Biden and other things. All of that in just a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At this moment, I want to give you some really good Brexit news. Yes, no, I really do. The government are really shouting from the rooftops to anyone that will listen that we've got some great news for our fishing industry. Yes, absolutely. Fisheries Minister Spencer's telling us we now, next year for 2023, have a further 30,000 tonnes of fish we can land each year commercially, sell in market. And that's really good news. And it shows that Brexit is working for fisheries. That's the government line. Well, if you live in the northeast of England, there is no increase in quota whatsoever. And all those boats that I see so regularly in the English Channel, fishing right up to our 6-mile line, not the 12-mile line that should be our absolute minimum under international law, but no, fishing right up to the 6-mile line. In fact, more French, Dutch, Belgian boats fishing on the 6-mile line than most people on the south coast of England have ever seen before. We still have vast factory ships, hard working in the English Channel, some of them catching as much as 150 tonnes a day of mackerel or herrings or sardines or whatever else it may be. And how extraordinary that this announcement about the good news for fishing comes just as the annual European Union Council meeting on fisheries quotas has ended. So here it is, Brexit Britain, where we voted to take back our fishing industry, to take back our territorial waters. How extraordinary that the reason we've got a further 30,000 tonnes we can catch this year is because the European Union have agreed to it. That is not what I campaigned for. It is not what our coastal communities voted for. It is not what the country deserves and expects. Is it any wonder that when the British public are polled today on whether they think Brexit was a good thing or a bad thing, a growing number think it was a bad thing, not because it was, but because of what the Conservatives have done with it. Now, Elon Musk is incredibly busy with Twitter, all sorts of Twitter polls now asking him not to continue as CEO. It is quite remarkable. But I'm going to cut now live to the White House, to President Biden and Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine.
So difficult. You know, if I'm calm, in that we control the situation and because of support. And first of all, because of your support, and I understand that we have very important topics and we'll discuss them, everything, so many challenges in Ukraine, in Europe, in the world.
Okay. Well, that was the Oval Office. That was the Oval Office, and it is, as I've said already, it is a significant meeting that is taking place. But I will go back. I will go back to where I was, because I was talking about America. I was talking about Elon Musk. I was talking about the Twitter files. And what was revealed last night on the Twitter files, I find this hard to believe, is that the FBI gave $3.5 million to Twitter for them to suppress certain pieces of information. Now, I don't want to get into this deep state conspiracy theory, but then when I look at the facts laid bare before me of what actually happened in the run-up to that election in November 2020, it would appear that much of mainstream media, of social media, and arms of government, like the FBI, did all they could to suppress what had happened what was seen on that laptop from Hunter Biden. I don't go along with claims about a stolen election, but I do think what America went through last time was not a free and a fair and an open election. And frankly, in my view, that whole thing is a complete disgrace. Now, Joe Lycett, the comedian, we've talked about him over the last few weeks, and he's really quite sparky and quite fun. And if you remember, just a few weeks ago, as the World Cup started, he was shredding 10 grand's worth of money. It was all a very big, dramatic gesture. It was his protest that we were going out to Qatar to play the World Cup. His protest that, you know, some stars were going out there and taking money. And in particular, you know, what he was aiming at, of course, was David Beckham, who was going out there as an administrator. So he shredded 10 grand's worth of money. It was a big, dramatic gesture, huge sensation on social media. Turned out, actually, it was fake money that he shredded and it wasn't his. And now it turns out that in 2015, he himself went out to the Middle East and did some paid gigs. This was revealed in The Sun. There's now a war of words between Joe Lycett and The Sun. But you know, the moral of the story is very, very simple. People in glass houses should not throw stones. In a moment, I'll be joined by former commodity trader Andrew Maguire. He spent his life specialising in gold and silver and precious metals. We'll talk about how our money used to be backed by gold, but it isn't any longer. Why that matters, what the impact of that's been on our lives, and what happens to gold from here on.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
It's time for Talking Pints. It really, really is. And my guest tonight, Andrew Maguire, is a former commodities trader. So we've sort of come from very similar backgrounds. Now, Andrew, your obsession with precious metals began as a teenager.
It certainly did. In fact, at 12 years old, I used to go to auctions and literally buy any old scrapped piece of silver. And of course, you know, collected all this stuff. And the family thought it was crazy. But actually, you know what? It turned out to be a really, really good investment. and I've loved... Silver's been something, a passion I've had for silver for many, many years. It's always been a currency throughout history.
Sterling,
absolutely.
You know, sterling, yeah.
And a benchmark. And it used to be a benchmark for the pound. And of course then, yes, but that evolved to gold, of course. And the gold and silver are joined at the hip, so to speak. And of course, gold is viewed really by governments, central banks as an asset.
Well, we're going to talk about the history of gold in a moment. I mean, I got involved with silver as a teenager. I think I was 16, 17. When I first got involved, I worked on the London Metal Exchange. You were a bullion dealer. So our backgrounds are very, very similar. But it's important to explain to people just how important gold was. It was the same thing as money up until 1971. Just give us a quick take on that.
Yep, up until 1971. It really, gold... basically it created a discipline. It created a discipline on governments where you couldn't just create money. It would be, you know, your money was backed by gold.
Yep.
Now, if we go all the way back to, if I was in 1200 and I was in Warwick Castle and I wanted to invade the castle in Kenilworth, I would go down to my to the vaults and I would count how many gold coins I had, because that is the limit as to whether I could actually go to war or not. Or in fact, if I did run out, they may pay them to come back on me. So basically, gold has always been, it provided discipline to...
But then President Nixon
broke
the link between the dollar and gold, which, as I see it, allowed governments to create what we call fiat money, allowed governments to start creating money, which has led to, well, not for the whole of the time, but a long period of inflation, a long period of monetary devaluation, which we're back into again today.
Absolutely full circle. And I think what happened was the minute that he depegged gold, the gold from the dollar, essentially, as you say, fiat currencies. What is a fiat currency? People know it is simply the pound or the dollar that you hold in your hand. What is it backed by? It's backed by faith in the government.
Confidence, that's what they tell us.
Absolutely. So do you have, this is the question I ask people, do you have confidence in this £20 note?
See, I'm told by the Bank of England that all cryptocurrencies are utterly valueless, but then I look at the existing money and I begin to ask, not quite the same, but similar questions. Andrew, you worked in this market, buying and selling gold.
Yep.
Governments, even though money is not pegged directly to gold, governments hold reserves of gold.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a chancellor who took over in 1997, the great Gordon Brown, who told us that gold was a barbarous relic, that its time had gone, and then proceeded to sell 400 metric tons of our gold reserves in the Bank of England at an average price of about $270 an ounce, and it's now $1,800 an ounce. What was he thinking?
Yeah, well, in pound terms, it's £1,450, so $1,800 in dollars, of course. So apples to apples. What was he thinking is absolutely right, and I think really at that point there, what it really sent us down a road of money printing and debasement, currency debasement, and I think so. Really, gold is, as you've just started out by saying, gold is money. Everything else is credit. Everything else is really, and then we're talking about debt-based systems here. We're talking about how is in, I mean, if you have your £20 note and you put it into the bank, number one, you've just loaned that to the bank. People don't realise that, but that actually is, it is in your name.
Yeah.
But, and they can fractionalise that and lend it out. But the thing is, it's depreciating. And what's the current rate of inflation in this country? 10% they claim? Actually, if you go down the grocery store, I don't think it's 10%. It's more like 20. And most people will just say, well, look at my basket has not cost me just 10% more. So really, when people say to me, well, look, yes, well, I've got cash in the bank. It's a bit of a risky environment right now. We're talking about governments.
And money's safe.
But
money's devaluing. I know, and that's going to catch up with people as it did in the 70s.
Yeah.
But within the gold market and within this relationship with central banks, with governments, with the markets, I mean, you've been a bit of a whistleblower. You believe there's great corruption that exists there.
We've proved it, Nigel. And back in 2008, I uncovered a scheme by our too big to fail banks had colluded, and it was called a conspiracy theory at the time, had colluded to rig the price of precious metal. Now we're talking about a market, and believe it or not, if you add in all of the paper derivatives that surround a piece of physical gold, you're talking about literally 70 trillion. I mean, a trillion, forget it. I'm sorry, guys, because I can't even imagine it. But anyway, you're talking about a market that is that big. So basically what happened was we uncovered a scheme where they would set the price of gold at the fixed point. There's a certain point in the day where you fix the price of gold.
In the morning in London, the official
London,
fix.
11 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning in London, and 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Now, the whole world, the whole globe, fixes their gold price to that price. Central banks do, bullion dealers, everyone across the world. And you're talking about a massive market here, as big as oil. So, essentially, if you can rig that price, and it's a bit like saying, this horse is going to win this race.
Very useful.
Absolutely, very useful. So really, it's a no-brainer that you will actually make money. So what I did was uncover this scheme, which we then reported it to the CFTC, which is the Commodity Futures Trading regulators. We reported it to the Department of Justice in America. Subsequently, we reported it to Andrew Bailey when he was head of the FCA. Of the FCA. But essentially, we proved that they were rigging the markets. We gave them 88 examples of where the price would fix the next day. We did that through lawyers so that we would timestamp the day before and say, here's the email, share it with the CFTC, share it with the DOJ, here's where the price of gold would be.
Do you believe there's been a willful attempt
to
keep the price of gold low?
It was a willful attempt to not just keep the price of gold low, but as an insider game to make money.
Yeah, well, corruption can exist in many, many forms. But looking at where we are today, you make the point that, being safe with your money and having it in the bank, and I get the mentality, you're losing 10% a year, or maybe a little bit more at this current moment in time. This programme is not here to give investment advice, and we're not giving investment advice, but I'm asking you, Andrew Maguire, your personal opinion of what you think gold does from here.
Right. So your alternative, stay in cash, put it in the bank, and you lose your 10%. That is an investment decision. You don't think that you get this lovely warm and fuzzy feeling between your ears, it's safe, it's in the bank. No, you are losing 10% minimum. Gold is a 5,000-year-old currency. It has never lost any value. It'll buy you today what it bought 5,000 years ago. And there's so much evidence of that. If you were a Roman legion, you could buy...
The buying power of gold.
The buying power of gold has never eroded. In fact, fiat currencies, really, you look at gold as the shore, and fiat currencies as the moving item. So people say, well, but isn't gold the first thing that people say? It has to be addressed. So is gold volatile? Well, if you look at it on a day-to-day basis, yes, every currency, and gold is a commodity, but it's also a currency. It's one of the few, there's only 2 or 4 real commodities that trade on the exchanges as a foreign exchange cross, as if it was pound dollar. It is gold dollar. It's gold pound. It's it trades as a foreign exchange cross. So it is a currency.
So longer term, medium term, not short-term punting for the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
You believe it's the right place to be.
Yeah, so if you just take 2008, take that as a benchmark, and you say, OK, where has gold in pound terms? It's gone 360% higher as of today.
It's been,
the pound is down 39%.
Yeah, if you've been in gold for the last 20 years, it's been a great place to be.
Yeah.
Andrew Maguire, people like him, we used to call gold bugs, and he's a proper gold bug. And I thank you for joining me. With a very short history of gold, but very valuable too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
OK, a few seconds left for Barrage the Farage. Yes, Bobby asks me. There is no love for the nurses, the GPs or the police anymore, let alone the rail staff. The public are sick of strikers. Do you agree? Look, to say there's no love for the nurses is just plain blooming wrong. I think actually there's huge respect for the nurses. Across the sectors, I think the rail unions are completely overplaying their hand and losing public support. But the government can win all of this, provided they're seen to be reasonable. And they seem to be going gratuitously on the offensive. Doesn't make sense to me. Time for one more. Grant asks, if Trump was the UK Prime Minister, how long would it take for him to stop the boats crossing the Channel? Probably about a fortnight, maybe less. And remember that Tony Abbott did do this. Tony Abbott did this in Australia 10 years ago. Time for one more. Yes, absolutely. Laura asks, will you be having turkey on Christmas Day? Andrew, turkey or goose?
It's going to be turkey, my friend.
Going to be turkey. Turkey for me as well, absolutely, with I think a ham on the side. If anyone's vegan watching this, well, don't be offended. It's a free country. We're all allowed to make our own choices, at least we should be, and say what we believe in without being cancelled, which is why GB News exists and why we're here. Now, standing again tonight for Mark Stein, back in Paddington is the one and only Patrick Christys.
Yes, Nigel, cracking show, as always. I would, of course, be having swan for Christmas dinner, if indeed it was legal. But I've got loads coming your way tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm going to be talking about Nicola Sturgeon's trans madness. Why are we housing illegal immigrants instead of UK kids? There's a UK kids homelessness crisis. I'll be talking about all of that and much, much more as well, including the latest climate conspiracy. Make sure you tune in as well. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Get them coming in, people. I will not be holding back as I fill in for the one and the only Mr. Mark Stein. We've had a rip-roaring week so far. Let's crack on, people, eh? Come on.
Good evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A fine day across parts of the north tomorrow with sunny spells, but it is going to be a north-south split, misty, murky conditions across much of the south with rain at times, courtesy of low-pressure systems and weather fronts moving in. This low is still bringing plenty of heavy showers across Scotland, parts of northern England this evening, and tightly packed isobars as well, still very blustery, but the showers will be fading here through the night. We'll keep some going in northern Scotland. Rain moving in once more across parts of southern England. Quite misty, murky conditions here as well. Some foggy conditions, especially on the higher routes. Staying quite mild in the south with clearer spells further north, 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, but most places above freezing to start Thursday. A grey day then across the south tomorrow with rain and drizzle at times. Some of that rain drifting into parts of northern England. For much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, a drier, brighter day. There will still be some showers, chiefly over northern Scotland. And as the northerly winds set in here once more, it's going to turn colder. So those showers may start to fall as sleet and snow. But no chance of that further south with double digits, 11 or 12 in the south. So mild but murky. And that murky weather persists during Thursday evening. Again, some foggy conditions on some of the higher routes leading into Friday. A few more showers keeping going across Scotland and Northern Ireland into Friday, but the main focus for Friday will be this band of rain sweeping in. Lots of people hitting the roads on Friday, of course, so just bear that in mind. Going to generate a lot of spray and surface water, and still poor visibility on some of the higher routes especially, as that rain band then by the end of Friday spreads into Northern England and Northern Ireland. Behind it, it may well turn brighter during Friday afternoon. Still pretty mild here as well, and still fairly cold further north, and that contrast for the next few days will continue, but the milder air will win out further north as we head into the Christmas period before perhaps turning colder as we head towards Boxing Day. Bye for now.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
In a moment, headliners on GB News, but first, the top stories this hour. The US and Ukrainian presidents have held a joint news conference from the White House in Washington this evening. President Joe Biden vowed to continue supporting Ukraine through its war with Russia, saying Americans stand proudly with the Ukrainian people and will do so for as long as it takes. It's been 300 days since Vladimir Putin launched his invasion into Ukraine, and Mr. Biden said the Ukrainian people had continued to show the world their unbreakable determination to fight for their freedom.
This year has brought so much needless suffering and loss to the Ukrainian people. But I want you to know, President Zelensky, I want you to know that all the people of Ukraine to know as well. The American people have been with you every step of the way, and we will stay with you. We will stay with you for as long as it takes. What you're doing, what you've achieved, it matters not just to Ukraine, but to the entire world.
Well, the US is the largest international donor of financial support to Ukraine, and early this week they announced a further £1.5 billion in military aid. Volodymyr Zelensky said every dollar will strengthen not only Ukraine's security, but global security too. Well, in other news today, the government has accused the unions representing ambulance workers of making a conscious choice to harm patients by going on strike.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? When?
Well, the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, claims unions are refusing to work with the government at a national level on how paramedics will cover emergency calls during strike action. But Unison's General Secretary, Christina McInerney, says Mr Barclay's refusing to negotiate on pay.
I'm getting nothing from him or from this government. All they're saying to me is, we can't negotiate about pay. And where does that leave us? One of the reasons the ambulance service, the NHS, is in such a dire state is because they haven't invested in the workforce. So people leave. Those who are left are under increasing pressure. These people don't get meal breaks. They hardly get a day off. They work excessive overtime because it's the only way the service can run.
A final vote on controversial gender reforms in Scotland has been delayed until tomorrow. MSPs were supposed to vote this evening, but instead continued to debate aspects of the bill. The bill will remove the requirement for a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria in order to receive a gender recognition certificate. It would also shorten the time people must live in their acquired gender from 2 years to 3 months. Dozens gathered to protest outside the Scottish Parliament, raising concerns over its possible impact on women and girls. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB even, plus radio. You're watching GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome.